In this video, we're going to talk about marketing planning and strategic planning. Marketing planning and strategic planning. Well, to start, strategic planning incorporates the whole business, and planning activities are aimed at meeting aims and objectives set by the strategic plan. So the strategic plan is aimed at the whole business. It's aimed at every aspect of the business, including marketing, but also looking at all of the various departments within the business, from production, if it's making a physical product, it may look at production, it could look at the HR function and recruitment, training, and the types of skills it wants its workers to have. It can look at all of the various departments. So strategic planning is trying to identify where the business wants to be in, let's say, 3 or 5 years' time, and the types of activities it should engage in now in order to achieve those targets in the future. So strategic planning is business-wide. Planning activities are aimed at meeting the aims and objectives set by the strategic plan. So once the plan has been formulated, then the planning process is trying to achieve what was set out in the strategic plan. So the planning process will identify particular objectives and particular targets and try to achieve those. It may set up, for example, performance indicators for each of the functions within the business and try to measure the performance of the business to see if it's on target for achieving the overall strategic plan. So the point is that strategic planning is business-wide. Now, marketing strategies are extracted from the strategic plans to form a marketing plan. Now, the market plan or the marketing plan is therefore based on what the business want to achieve in the future. So the market plan is identifying what it is that the marketing section need to do in order to bring about the results that the organization wants. So it'll look at the type of market, the type of product, the segments of the market, the research it needs to do, the feedback mechanisms it put into place from customers' feedback, from after-sales service and customer services and so on. So it'll look at all of the various functions, but its target is to achieve the objectives and the ideals set out in the strategic plan. So the marketing plan is derived from the strategic plan. In order to understand the link between marketing planning and strategic planning, it's important to understand the distinctions between strategic planning, the planning process, goals and objectives, and strategy. These words seem to overlap and they seem to run together. Excuse me, but there is actually a distinction. It may be very subtle, but there is a distinction between them. And the rest of this particular session will be dealing with these ideas in one form or another. Strategic planning sets broader goals for the organization. Strategic planning is, as I said earlier, it's organization-wide. It covers the whole organization. So it sets very broad goals. A successful strategic plan is one which generates profits and maintains competitive advantage. But it also does a little more. It enables the business to perhaps grow. That may be part of the strategic plan, to grow the business, to become dominant within the market, to increase its market share. So it may set out specific objectives that it wants to achieve in a certain time period. So clearly it must make profits. If it doesn't make profits, the business won't exist. And to make the profits, it must compete effectively. So it must maintain competitive advantage or even improve its competitive position by outwitting the competitors, by undercutting their price or by innovating the product, offering better value for money to the customer. But whatever route it takes, the idea is to meet its strategic objectives in the time period that's been set. The marketing department review and assess product development and consider changes to the marketing mix. So the marketing department is involved not just in trying to build relationships within the market that will try to enhance sales, but they're also trying to pick up on the feedback that customers make about the product. The product, after all, should meet customer requirements. If it doesn't meet the customer requirements, it will not sell. So what are the customer requirements? Now, the marketing department can pick up on those. It's dealing with the customers, it's talking to them, it's getting feedback from retailers and wholesalers and different agents in the market, and so it's getting information from a variety of sources. And that information should be fed back to the organization, indicating what innovations or what changes to the product are desirable. So to some extent the marketing department will be the leader in directing the sort of research activity, the product development activity within the business. It's their contribution that drives that sort of initiative. But they'll also be looking at the marketing mix. The marketing mix is just which lever is most effective in the marketing effort. Levers such as changes in price or changes in the product, where the product should be marketed, which district or which area or to which segment the product should be orientated, and the type of promotion used. How should the product be promoted? Now, what I've just listed out there is actually what's known as the 4 Ps, and in the marketing literature the 4 Ps has been extended to several other Ps, including packaging and so on. But the 4 basic Ps are the price, the place, the product and the promotion. And the idea is to find whichever of these components is most effective and to try and push the product, to market the product, to make it available by tweaking which of those Ps, which of those strategies should be deployed. It may be, for example, that customers are not very responsive to a lowering of price. A lowering of price may alienate customers. They may see the product now as cheap and low quality. Types of promotion, well, should they use direct promotion to the customer? Should they use some form of even advertising? How should they promote it? How should they promote the reputation? The types of areas in which it advertises, in high quality magazines or on billboards or in cheap local papers. It all indicates the type of product it is. But the marketing department must sort that out. The marketing planning is the development of plans to continue developing product that perceive a need and dominate the industry. It's important that the marketing department, in dealing with customers and dealing with agents in the market, pick up on what their requirements are specifically, so they're able to feed that back to the organization, which, as I said earlier, will influence the research areas of the industry, of the company. It'll influence the research thrust of the company, and it will lead to better product development which is tailored to the customer requirements. Now, if that doesn't happen, then the whole effort, of course, is in vain. If they're producing a product that's not completely satisfying the customer. Customers will always be on the lookout for a better alternative. Customers will not be that loyal to the product. They might buy it because there are very few alternatives available, but when one does become available, they will leave. So it's important to stop that happening. It's important for the company to produce products that precisely match customer requirements, if possible. Now, the link between strategic planning and marketing planning. Well, the marketing function has an important role in strategic planning. Marketing planning provides the link between the business and the external environment. So here is the bridge. Here is the way that the company can get information. It's through the marketing department. As I have said before, it's the marketing department who has their finger on the pulse. They know the customers, or they should know the customers. They should know the customer requirements. They should pick up on information in the market. They should listen. In addition, they should conduct research, reliable research, into customers' needs, customers' opinions. They could organise market surveys or have focus groups or involve customers more in the type of activities they do. Ask for opinions. Ask for criticisms of the product. Look for the downsides associated with the product, and then try and fix the downsides. Try and fix the issues that don't entirely match customer requirements. So it's the marketing department that's the link to the outside world. It's the marketing department that links the company internally to the external environment where the customers are. Marketing planning contributes to the development of strategic plans and answers key questions. Where are we now? And where do we intend to go? It may seem like a trivial question, but it's a very important question. The company needs to look critically at where it is and look at what can be done and where it wants to be. And it should be realistic and honest about that appraisal. And as far as possible, base it on fact. Look at its performance from the accounts. Look at its return on investment. And try to determine what is the average return on investment within that sector, if possible. And see how well it's doing. Try to benchmark its own performance against others. Look at other competitors, for example, and look at whether they're growing, if they seem to be prosperous. You don't even have to have detailed knowledge of their accounts. They may be private companies and therefore that information is not available. But just look at their premises. Look at the way they operate. Look at their distribution mechanisms. Look at the channels that they're using and the number of channels for distribution they're using. Look at their presence in the market. Look at the types of products they're making. Look at their rate of innovation. And that will tell you how the company fares at the moment against them. So what needs to be done? So look at B, point B here. Where do we hope to be in the future? Well, that's the start of the quest for a strategic plan. That's the starting point. Where do we want to be in the future? What's our strategic plan? What do we want to achieve? What's important to us? Where do we want to be in 5 years' time? What sort of company do we want to be? And point C, are we working to a schedule? Are we working to a plan at the moment? Because some companies are proverbially firefighting, and by that I mean they're fixing problems on a day-to-day basis, and they're so caught up in the day-to-day running of the business that they don't have time to think ahead. And therefore, they're working in the here and now. They're working at this moment, but they're not thinking about a year's time or 5 years' time. They're thinking about just trying to do the best they can at the moment to meet customer requirements. They're not thinking forward. Maybe they don't have the time to do it. But what is required is to make the time to try and get a plan that's going to enable them to more effectively meet customer requirements and to grow and to develop into the future. So they need to move away from the more operational to the more strategic. They need to think about it. It's a blend of the two. We live in the present and we must fix the problems of the present because that's where we are at the moment. But we need a direction as to where we want to be, and that's our strategy, and that's our strategic thinking. Now let's look at the marketing planning process, or one view of it that we can imagine. For example, we could start with a mission statement. Generally speaking, people tend to do the mission statement much later when the business is up and running, and they sort of reflect on what they're doing and the type of product they're making and their activities, and then draw up the mission statement. But let's say we start with the mission statement. We start with some idea. What do we want to make? What's the product? What's the market? What sort of product do we want? What quality do we want? What sort of business do we want? How do we want to project the business to the world? We want to project it, for example, as a green business. That's one that's saving the environment, saving the planet. We don't want to be wasteful and use unnecessary resources. We want to satisfy customers' wants, customers' needs. We want to have an innovative program of product development. We want to be market leader. We want to be an employer that's caring for its workers and offers good returns to the workers and also looks after their health and safety. So we can list the type of desirable qualities that a business should have and somehow make these into a statement. Now, mission statements generally are very short statements. They can be 40 or 50 words, or it could be a long sentence. Some maybe are too long and they might run on to half a page of A4. Well, mission statements generally are quite short. We normally find the mission statements on the final accounts for companies. We may also find them on their websites or on areas where they want to present their corporate credentials. So, mission statement, that's a broad picture of the type of business, the type of product, and what the business wants. But you can see immediately from what I've just said that that's the basis for a strategic plan. The strategic plan, where the business wants to be, the type of product, how it's going to produce its green credentials, as I said, how it's going to produce the product, how it relates to its workforce, how it relates to the customers and where it wants to be. And so you can see that the mission statement and the corporate strategy are linked. In fact, the mission statement is a nice way of posing the corporate strategy. So it's setting out what the business wants. Now, I've gone down a slightly different route to many of the techs in this area who will jump straight to looking at strategic planning from here. But I think before the strategic plan can be developed, there needs to be some research, some analysis, and some reflection. I think it's pointless to jump straight to this is what we're going to do because they may not have the resources to do it. They may not have the capability to do it. So it's important to make sure that its objectives are realistic. What's the size of the market? How much are customers willing to pay for the product? What's the rate of technical innovation within the market? What's the rate of obsolescence? How many companies have gone bankrupt in this particular sector? Why did it go bankrupt? Why did it go out of business? It may not have gone bankrupt, it may just have gone out of business, but why? Why did it go out of business? So I think it's important that there is extensive research, analysis and reflection before the strategic plan is worked out. I think the strategic plan has to be based on something, and it has to be based on information. It has to be realistic. And that information is the product of thinking, research, analysis of data, discussions, meetings, and reflection. The phase 2 here would be a situational review. Look at the marketing audit. Get the marketing department to critically evaluate the market. What is the size of the market? What are the customers like? What are the customers' requirements? And take that back to the company. Take back all the information that they possibly can about the market, about the attributes of the market, about the expectations within that market segment, expectations about product development and so on. So take it back and feed it into this whole research and reflection and analysis structure. So now the marketing department are on a quest to find information within their segment, their production segment, and within their area of expertise, what they're producing. But they're looking at the market to find out what the market will take and what they will want. Do a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You could do a Porter's 5 forces. Look at the different structure in the Porter's 5 forces and also try to analyze the sector. But a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. List out what the strengths of the business are. Look at its weaknesses. Where is the business weak? Look at the opportunities that the market presents. And look at the threats. Look at the competitive environment in which the business is operating. Look at the barriers to entry and look at how easy it is for competitors to arise. Then do the strategic plan. This is the strategy formulation stage. So now there's a strategic plan that's been developed, but it's been developed carefully with knowledge that is based on accurate research, hopefully, and incorporating the various techniques that I've just mentioned in 2, 3, and 4 in our diagram here. Once we've got the strategic plan, of course, we've got corporate objectives. Now we can separate out the strategic plan and indicate to various departments what's required of them. The production department, for example, may be told about what's required of them in terms of production, innovation, change, and so on. So there are issues that need to be discussed with various departments to ensure that the various departments understand the objectives that have been set. It may be the case that the objectives have benchmarking associated with them. It may be the case that the objectives can be measured. There are performance indicators set with the various benchmarks. It's important that they're broken down by department and that each department knows exactly what's required of it. So the production department will have its targets and the marketing department will have its targets and the HR department will be responsible for ensuring the welfare of the workers, and also the workers that are employed are trained and have the skills that the organisation require. So we've moved from the strategic plan, this broad statement, to more defined objectives. Marketing objectives and strategies should also be determined. This fits within the corporate objectives. As I said earlier, the corporate objectives will have objectives set for production and for HR and for all of the different departments. But one of the departments will be marketing, so it will have its objectives and strategies set out. And this is where the marketing plan now starts to take shape. the marketing plan now must be developed in accordance with the corporate requirements. So we have to estimate the expected results. We have to, or the people dealing with the planning process, perhaps more appropriately, must estimate the expected results. What are the likely outcomes from the whole activity, from the planning process? And will the targets that were set and assumed to be realistic, will they be achieved? It's also a good idea to identify alternative plans. It's always a good idea to have a plan B, just in case plan A doesn't work, or there are unforeseen circumstances, or the market changes in some unexpected way, or government intervenes in some way that was not expected, or something happens. So it's always best to have an alternative ready, if possible. So if something happens, the company can move around, can reorientate, and go down a different route and get it fixed. So now, here is a schematic presentation, one particular schematic presentation of moving from mission right down to how the plan is developed. You'll see in different textbooks slightly different presentations of this, but essentially the linkage between strategic plan, mission, and corporate objectives, and then detailed departmental planning, these are all sequentially linked. There may be, like I've got additional little boxes here where I've got SWOT indicated as a type of technique that could be used. They're talking about the expected results on number 8 and the identifying alternative plans, number 9. These are just additions, but the core is mission, strategic plan, out of strategic plan, the corporate objectives, and then the individual plans for the various departments. We can look at this, rearrange them. I mean, for example, we could have something like that, which essentially is the same as what I've got here, but slight modifications. So we have strategic plan at the top, mission statement, market review, SWOT analysis, and so on. You'll see it differently in different texts. Don't worry about that. Providing the logic is in place, that the idea is that the business must know where it's going, what its plans are for the next, say, 3 to 5 years. It must think ahead. It must think about how to achieve its objectives, its strategic plan, and out of the strategic plan it tries to derive corporate objectives, much more detailed requirements, and then to achieve the individual corporate objectives there might be supplementary plans, departmental plans to try and achieve that. So we move all the way down. The planning process cascades down from the strategic plan down to individual departments. Now, the link between strategic planning and marketing planning. Well, strategic planning is responsible for setting the mission statement. The strategic plan is where the business wants to be and how it's going to achieve it and so on, the type of product it's going to make. Setting objectives, the corporate level, for example, goals and aims. So the strategic plan sets out precisely what the business should try to achieve. Sometimes it's in very vague language, very generalized language, but sometimes it could indicate particular routes it's going to take and particular emphasis it's going to place on certain functions, for example on research and development, or on perhaps developing more efficient technologies and using more efficient technologies. It depends. So it depends on the product, it depends on the style of management. But there's also a functional level that should be mentioned. Now this is where activities take place: marketing, human resources, finance, production. And in there, if we like, that's where the work happens, and they should get a mention as well. So strategic planning is responsible for the direction of the business, and also ensuring that the functional level is supported so that it in turn can help or make a contribution, which is absolutely imperative to the achievement of the strategic plan. Now, the mission statement. Well, the mission statements are used by companies. They typically involve a brief overview of the company's present and business purpose. Usually it's very brief. As I said earlier, 30, 40, 50 words. Usually a small paragraph. It could even be a long sentence. Short, that's the idea. It tells the reader what the business is about in a very succinct manner. It addresses the questions of who we are and what we do. In essence, it states the company's products and services and its target customers. That's all it does. It's a very quick snapshot picture of the business. It's found normally in company reports, but you can be on a website as well. Now, setting objectives. Well, convert a strategic vision and mission into specific performance targets. These set out the results and the final outcome of the company intends to achieve. So it's important that the company has a strategic vision, which is what guides it, but then it can, out of the strategic vision, it can take particular targets for each of the functional areas, production, marketing and so on, and give them guidance as to what they should be doing. It aids companies to be innovative and motivated in achieving results. So the objectives are quite specific and easily understood by the departmental heads, by the various managers, senior managers who are involved in departmental level. They understand exactly what's required of them. And what is required of them, of course, is part of the requirements for the strategic plan. It helps companies to plan out their strategic paths, because sometimes when they set objectives, the feedback from the departmental managers may be that the requirements are not realistic. They haven't got the resources, they haven't got the capability, there are issues. So sometimes the feedback has to be taken on board, and the strategic plan itself may have to be modified because of the feedback from this level. Now, setting objectives. Well, objectives are what a company wants to achieve. These are the more practical statements of what the company wants to achieve. They may be quantitative. We want to achieve a rate of growth of 3% next year. We want to have 10% of market share. We want to introduce a new product next year. We want to... They're quantitative, but they could also be qualitative. We aspire to promote the welfare of our workers in whatever we... So sometimes they're measurable and sometimes they're aspirational, but even though they're aspirational, they're still built in and effort must be expended to try and achieve them. They're built into the whole process and they should be tried to be achieved. Objectives can be considered at two levels, corporate and functional. Now, at the corporate level, these are objectives that concern the business as a whole. They're corporate, so these are the objectives that involve the whole business. Examples might include setting a target return on investment of at least 20%. That's for the whole business. So, by simply looking at the accounts, looking at the amount of the assets on the accounts, then looking at the return, the profit that's been generated by the business, they want to make it around 20%. Let's say that could be an example of a corporate level objective. It could be aiming to achieve an operating profit of over £10 million. It depends on how it's stated. Aiming to increase earnings per share by 15% yearly. It depends. Just look at the statements of the business. Look at what the business wants to achieve. It's at the corporate level. This is what overall they want to achieve. At the functional level, specific objectives for marketing purposes. Examples of functional marketing objectives may include aspiring to build a customer database of at least 100,000 households within the next 2 years. So it's a very functional thing. The marketing department has set itself a target of doing this. The idea is, of course, that that will in turn be used for marketing purposes, which will ultimately promote the business and perhaps help it to achieve the corporate objectives that we just talked about. It'll help it to make the £10 million or the £5 million or whatever it is that's been set at the corporate level. So the functional objective is to, let's say, build a database of so many within a certain time period. Or it could be setting a target to achieve a market share of 20% in the next 2 years. So the company looks at its existing market share and tries to increase it up to 20%. And of course, by doing so, it's helping to achieve the corporate objectives, whatever the corporate objective was. But the idea of setting this functional target or this functional objective is that it will contribute towards the achievement of the corporate one. Could be to achieve 50% customer awareness of the brand. So there are different functional objectives that can be set. But overall, they should contribute towards the achievement of the corporate objective. Now, the link between strategic planning and marketing planning. Well, marketing planning follows from strategic planning. We've already said this. The strategic plan is at the corporate level. Marketing planning is within that department. But its whole idea is to support the strategic plan and to try and achieve the outcomes from the strategic plan. When the aims and objectives have been determined on the corporate level or at the corporate level, the objectives cascade through the functional departments. That's the whole idea. The corporate plan sets what it wants to do, and then these cascade downwards through the various departments, and the various departments have to work to set objectives which will contribute towards the achievement of the strategic objectives. The marketing planning process must work in line with corporate objectives and ensure that marketing objectives are in place to achieve corporate objectives. So, in other words, the marketing objectives must support the corporate objectives. It's not acceptable if the marketing objectives are trying to achieve something other than the corporate objectives. So clearly, all of the functional areas, including marketing and including the marketing plan, all of them should be working towards the achievement of the corporate objectives. Marketing planning process offers direct links to the external environment. Marketing planning allows senior management to assess their products in the marketplace. So, as I said earlier, it's the function of the marketing section to determine customers' needs and requirements and to ensure that the business is producing a product which will fit with customers' expectations. If they're not doing that, they won't make the sales. And if they don't make sales, they won't make a profit and they won't be in business. So it's vital that the marketing department have involvement with the customers, that they understand the customers, that they go out of the business to visit the customers and talk to the customers and conduct market research and understand customer requirements. Because that's the conduit for information flowing back to the business. That's what's going to influence the business and tell the business if it's doing well or not doing well, if it's producing the appropriate product or not. So it's important that the marketing department undertake that activity to provide information to the business. Right, in this video we've looked at marketing planning and strategic planning. By now I hope that the difference between the two should be clear. The strategic planning at the corporate level, the marketing planning within one of the functional areas within the marketing section, but all of the functional areas, including marketing, should be trying to achieve objectives which are derived from the strategic plan and will therefore feed back into the performance of the business at the corporate level. So it's important that all of the functional areas are aware of the strategic plan and their requirements. But also, of course, that the objectives set are realistic and achievable. It's imperative, it's absolutely vital that the senior management of the business set objectives which are realistic. That's all I'm going to deal with in this session, so I'm going to say thank you for watching.